Welcome to the Midsters Podcast, your podcast for inspiration on being bold and saying yes to making the most of your midlife.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Are you happy to be here?
Of course,
It's one of our favorite subjects.
especially because we're talking about the thing that we have, friendship,
It's true. And what has that done?
everything.
It's stretched me.
Yeah, me too.
I think we should talk a little bit about the different types of friendships that we have because we've talked about friendships and the meaning of friendships, and there is a spectrum of it. But I think that we can actually be retrospective in our past friendships. And I think that we can look at where we are now and in the future, and we actually can curate and bring together those type of friendships that sustain us the most.
Right, because you can look back and see patterns
Right.
in the kinds of people that you bring around you, that you engage with, and maybe those patterns are healthy, maybe they're not.
Right. And I mean, I think we pull on friendships. I don't mean pull on, but we go to certain friends for certain situations. I mean, I was just kidding yesterday, sort of, not really, but that if I had to cover up a crime, you'd be the friend that I call. I mean, you just would.
Which is ironic because I was a prosecutor and I would cover up for you.
So we do go to different friends for different things, whether it's advice, whether it's to challenge us, whether it's to cry. I will say, I think overall, if we're lucky enough, our husbands are probably, our spouses are probably our best friends. And I would consider them, I would put them in the group of foundational friends in some way. And I think of foundational friends of sometimes it's legacy, but it's those friends that you can be unfiltered with. Like they can walk into my house and it can be a mess. I could be a total mess, but I don't have to put on a performance. There's
That ability
love
to be
those.
completely authentic and genuine is really one of the key things about marriage.
Right.
If it's working, that's a real plus.
It's really true. And I think it starts there. And hopefully at some point our relationships with our children, if we have children, they become that as well. And I will say I have siblings and I would consider them foundational friends. Those basic, wonderful, loving relationships that I can count on, that are sustainable, that are there. But lately, what excites me the most in the last decade, maybe a little more than that, I moved up here about 30 years ago, well, close to 30 years ago. And I think I was reluctant at the beginning, not knowing, but in the last decade or so, are those expansive friends, the ones that challenge me, the ones that actually have tension.
Mm.
They cause tension to where I actually have to think about things, but they stretch me. They help me grow. They actually change my perspective sometimes.
It's interesting because I don't think of tension, but I think that's a good word. Throughout my life at different periods, I have had like kind of one-off friends that fall in that expansive friendship mode
Mhm.
where, I was at some point in my life and that friend was there and helped me navigate a period of change
Yeah.
where I kind of went from one state of being to another. And those friendships don't always last. Sometimes they do,
Right.
but they're so powerful and so important.
Yeah.
And I know the first one I would think of is when I got divorced from my first husband. And I think I told you this yesterday. We were
Yes.
talking about this. But I'd been with him since college. I had been, in college and then in law school and then working for a law firm where all of my time was absorbed with work kind of things. He should have been my best friend, my foundational friend, but he wasn't. And so when we separated, I was kind of like socially alone.
Right.
I really didn't know how to navigate. I was in DC. I wasn't from DC. I didn't really know many people because I'd been so focused on school and work. And I kind of needed like to figure my way. And I met a woman through a friend who was she was very flamboyant. She was very social. She did all this amazing stuff. She was involved in everything all at once. And I was kind of like in awe of her. And I thought this would be somebody who would be important to my life. So I actually called her and said, I met you at so and so's house. And I know this sounds strange, but I'm newly divorced and I don't really know what to do with myself. So if there's any parties or any events or anything that you're doing that you think I might appreciate, I would really appreciate you calling me. And she was like, I got you. And for the next 5 years, sort of my intermarriage period, she was just an amazing friend. I grew so much in that period, and it was because of her.
Yeah. I think about that, and you're right. That would probably fit somewhat in that expansive, but also that's an aspirational friend. You saw someone that you aspired, something you admired in her as what was inspiring you to be like that. So it was expansive, but also aspirational. And we do have aspirational friends. I have people in my life that I aspire to be like in some way. There's something that they have that I feel would enrich my life if I could be somewhat like that. So, yeah, expansive friends are important. I've been challenged by it. It's interesting. I now almost 60 years old. As you know, I moved all over the world, but I think of Texas as like kind of my foundational place. And I would say that most of my friendships, including my family at that point until I moved to DC, which was like a foreign country to me, um, were mirror friends. And when I say mirror friends, they mirrored who I was, the things I liked, the way I thought, my political views, my church views, spiritual. They were mirror friends. And I think they are very important because they kind of allow you to understand your own identity in some ways. But the other side of that is it becomes an echo chamber.
Mm.
And so I think that it doesn't allow the growth that we all can benefit from. And I was stubborn in that. When I moved up here, and I don't want to talk about politics, but I'm in DC. So, and it's a very liberal place for the most part. And so I bumped up against a lot of conversations that did not mirror the way I thought. And I sought out those friends that had the same, not just political, but they were from the South. They grew up in the same type families that I did. They weren't Northeastern educated, but they were maybe from University of Texas or A&M like me or Ole Miss, whatever it might have been. I sought that because I wanted to hang on to my identity and what I knew about myself. Over the years, I've found that I now seek those friends that are expansive, that challenge me. You're one of those. I mean, we do have a lot of likeness, I think, in general. But there's 3 people in my life that I would say over the last couple of decades that really have pushed me out of my comfort zone, and challenged my thinking and widened it. And I'm very appreciative to it because now that is kind of my identity in a lot of ways. I was able to find pieces of myself that I didn't allow myself to reflect in. Um, and when you're in an echo chamber, there is an importance to it, but it doesn't allow you to change your thinking. You
I
don't
think
realize.
Yeah, I think if you're in the echo chamber and you recognize and understand that you're there for that reason, that it is a comfort zone,
Mhm.
but that there is more outside of that you can explore,
Right.
and you do explore. Coming back to home is okay,
Oh, yes.
you know?
You
But
need it.
you
It's
need it.
stability.
Right.
It's
But being able to see it for what it is so that you can push beyond it when you want to and when you're
yeah.
ready to is really important. You and I have a shared experience that I think I kind of want to pause for a minute, and I want to say this very carefully because I don't want it to come across uh, insensitive. But
Mhm.
I do think, especially in that sort of mirror friend stage, people do tend to gravitate to other people that are like them, not just in terms of their political views, but in terms of race, ethnics,
Right.
demographics. And that is a comfort zone that is very limiting.
Mm-hmm.
I know for my son in elementary school, I was encouraged. I've talked about this before, I think, but my son was actually expelled from preschool, which is kind of a bizarre thing. I mean, going into elementary school, the elementary school where we would ordinarily have sent him was a very homogenous community, economically, socioeconomically, race, ethnicity. It was all the same.
We do share this.
Yes. And so the psychologist that I worked with when we were trying to get him ready to go to school after being expelled from preschool, because we thought there must be something terribly wrong, flash,
There's not.
there was nothing wrong, except an intolerant teacher. But setting that aside, the psychologist we worked with said that we would be better to send him to a magnet school in town, which was much more diverse. It was at the time pretty racially balanced. So it was like less than 50% white, and the remaining 50+% was pretty much divided between African American, Asian, and Hispanic.
Yep.
There were people of every socioeconomic group. One of my daughter's best friends was a cab driver. We had friends whose parents were business people and lawyers at big firms. So it was just all over the map. I am so glad, not just that my kids had that experience, but that I had that experience, because I encountered so many people. And the same thing happened to me at work when I went from working for a big firm to working for the U.S. Attorney's Office in D.C. The colleagues that I had were an incredibly diverse group of people. And talk about expansive friendships, to the extent that some of those colleagues became friends. They changed my view of the world.
Oh, yeah. And for our children. So my son, similar, homogenous and bullied and so forth, was recommended to go into a different environment. And it has changed him and us as well. I think of my son now. Back then you would have probably considered him an outlier in that previous environment. He definitely was. He thinks outside the box. He's got this little bit of quirkiness. But this is the kid that is fluent in Arabic. That's now a state prosecutor in Miami-Dade with all kinds of diversity. And it has allowed him also to realize those friendships that he made along the way in a diverse group, what that brings to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that is important. I will say, I know people that this is seriously, they will not have anything to do with anyone that doesn't think about them politically. It is a red light.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, I take that with caution. I think I've never been that way. I couldn't be that way. I moved from conservative Texas to D.C. I mean, I was either going to sink or swim in this environment. It was the hardest clique to ever get into, if you want to call it a clique. But I think along the way, if we can sit, just what you said in explaining about your son, if we all can be a little reflective about the times in our lives that we have been introduced to the tension, that might have brought tension and might have made us raise our eyebrows and pause for a moment and think about the value in that, because it is important. I wish the whole world could understand that. Mm-hmm. For us, I think our friendship started, we had some commonality because we both had children. You and my husband actually were friends and worked together as well. But as we raised our families, we both encountered different challenges, but they also kind of mirrored each other in a way. So there was some type of mirroring. We grew up, different worlds, different families, different parts, things like that. But I think the reason this works, like even the podcast, and we do a lot of travel and things like that, is I seek out your perspective and your view because it's made me grow. And the value in that. So for listeners, don't stay in the echo chamber. You're missing out. Mm-hmm. Two other people and I don't have a lot of male friends, that I don't. My husband's my biggest male friend. But another one we had in common was Brian Peterson. Mm-hmm. And what he brought to me on the expansive role, and unfortunately he's passed on, is he would talk about the lives, the cultures, the people from different parts of the world, Ethiopia, Nepal. And he would have these stories that would open my eyes to the gratitude I have today, to the value of things with nothing. Like, they had no shoes, they barely had teeth, but they had the biggest smile and were thankful. And you talk about that experience with Tanzania, and when I talk about expansive friendships and the tension, what I mean is it's introducing something so outside of what I normally think of. I would not normally think about somebody in Ethiopia that has no shoes and none of, but it made me think about it. It made me appreciate, even in our own country, those people that I can learn pure joy from, people that find joy and love without the things that I've been blessed with, economically. The third person, who is another person that came on the scene much, later than Brian Peterson and you, would be the boat captain, Dennis. And the challenge and the tension there, and I don't see him much. We see him once in the summer for a week, and we'll have a few phone calls. What he has brought to the table for me, also like you, both of you have changed my perspective politically, and I'm not making a political stance here because I sit in the middle, but it's made me truly realize and think outside the echo chamber that I was in, and challenged me in such a way that has brought, and I'm a nurse, so I have empathy, but a different type of empathy, but also perspective. Like, don't just believe what you believe, sit in it. Let somebody challenge you with it. And expansive friends do that. They're not the most comfortable at the beginning because you're like, the heck? No. Like,
And that's part of the tension. It's interesting because, like, with you and I, and we talk about things, and you said a minute ago that I've influenced your thinking. I appreciate that. You've influenced mine. And I know, and, dear listeners, you would be shocked sometimes to hear our conversations because we get a little hot with each other. We do. And I can be very stubborn. I own that. And especially sometimes I can be very stubborn with you. But I always go home
yeah.
after those conversations and think about what you've said and look into it, because I'm not going to just dismiss out of hand because you might disagree with me, because I value the friendship. And that's part of what an expansive friendship is. It has to be a friendship that you value. Because I value the friendship, I'm not going to just dismiss what you're saying. I'm going to think about it. And you have actually changed my thinking too. Stubborn as I am,
I'm going to keep going.
I can change. I can change. But I want to change.
Right.
Because
That's how I feel.
that's what a friendship brings to you. It allows you to be a fuller person.
Yeah. And I think it's the most challenging type of friendship. And I would say midlife is like the perfect time to be able to do that. I think when we're younger, we clam on to those they're functional situational friends. They're the foundational friends, the ones that we feel so comfortable with. And don't have to worry about arguing or being challenged with.
Right. And I would add a category there in sort of early midlife. I think there are a lot of social friends who secure your social status. And that's important too. You need to be able to feel like you can move comfortably in the world that you're living in. And there are friends that anchor you in that world. It's a little different from foundational friendships.
Yeah.
I would consider them sort of the social friendships.
Right.
Some of those progress to more important friendships, but a lot of them are just there to kind of put you in a position.
Well, and I think we have seasonal friends.
Yes.
I've had a lot of seasonal friends. I've also had certain friends that I go to for support, for certain reasons. I've been challenged recently with taking care of my parents and decisions being made. And there's an individual in DC that, was responsible for her parents. And then she went on and took a lot of classes about geriatric care manager and encouraged me to find a geriatric care manager. She's more than just that, but she's a supportive friend in a very specific place that I can trust the advice because of the knowledge, that the body of knowledge that she has, and the empathy there and the experience. So we do seek out friends that we know, or people, even acquaintances at that point, that we know have been through something. I think as parents, I have 2 children, and one did have, social challenges, and I sought after other parents that have been in that spot before to help support me through that, and those friendships are very important as well. As we get older, I mean, we have our kids, we have our family, siblings, they're my friends, but friendships become so important because our kids are a big part of our lives, but they're not our everyday. They're just not.
Well, not
And if
anymore.
they don't, yeah, if they don't live, I mean, we touch base with ours every day, but they're not the people I'm gonna play mahjong with or go do photography with those long, um, what would you say? Well, for us, it's like 2, 3-day type of trips and spending a lot of time, off and on like that, which is so valuable. So even though I like my kids, I like all those relationships, friendships as we get older. And talking about the older population, I mean, it's epidemic that they're lonely. They have family, but guess what they don't have?
They don't have friends.
They don't have friends. They
Because
get
it can
passed
be
on.
harder. It can be
Well,
hard.
they're isolated, hard to get out.
Right, right.
They don't understand the technology of FaceTime. I think FaceTime is wonderful. I mean, phone calls are great, but FaceTime brings another dimension of that emotional well-being because you're looking at somebody and it adds something else to a friendship. It's almost like being here.
I talked to a friend, more of an acquaintance actually, but she recently moved into my area. And so we ran into each other and chatting in the grocery store. And she said that she had found it very difficult. They had sold their home and moved into a like 55 plus community.
Yeah.
And they were very unhappy there because everyone had established relationships and they were the newcomers. And it was like being the freshman in high school that moved in from another place and didn't have established friendships. She couldn't figure out how to break in, and people weren't welcoming. And so they decided that wasn't for them, right? And
So
moved
moved
again
out.
and moved out. And it made me think a piece of the whole friendship thing is to always remember to be a friend.
Right.
Look out for people. Like letting new people into your life is a positive thing. You don't have to close the book at a certain number or with a certain mix of foundational friends and social friends and expansive friends. There's always room for more. If somebody can bring something to your life, you can bring something to theirs.
New friends are exciting.
They are exciting.
Because they bring a whole different, personality a lot of times.
In the past 6 months, I've made a number of new friends because last summer, my dear friend, Margie Finn, who was going to actually be on another episode of this podcast, invited me to join her with a group of people to learn mahjong.
Uh-huh.
And through that, because I didn't know any of the other women that she invited, but oh my goodness, lovely people who have become, in 6 months' time, dear friends.
That's wonderful.
And so, there's always room for more.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be, a closely held group.
And I think that when you have hobbies, and as we get older, even establishing new hobbies, that is the inlet. I think that's the inlet. Sometimes it's church and so forth, but those, you're sitting listening to church, or you might do some community stuff. But if you have a hobby where you're spending quality time, I mean, our friendship grew over photography, over a hobby. And we have, I think about Marie Stewart. I mean, there are friends that we've met
Through
because of it that have become so important to us because we have that commonality and we enjoy something together. And just like you're talking about Margie Finn and that group, it's important. I think it's exciting to meet new people. I love it. And sometimes they become situational friends, you know?
they can become expansive friends.
Right. I think the dimensional piece to it, like a circle of friends, because you need those ones that ground you. I think you need the ones that support you. And I think you need the ones that stretch you. Those are all so important. But we don't think about, when I was 20s, I hung on to, the group that liked to go out dancing and maybe in the same field that I was in nursing. And then when we're with our kids and raising our kids, it's situational friendships. It's those people that you're sitting in the bleachers with and that type of friendship. So really, this is a podcast about being bold and in midlife. And what midlife has opened up is this realm of new friendships, keeping our old friendships, but the expansive ones, and we have time to kind of challenge our own thinking, you
You
know?
know who always challenges our thinking?
Yes.
Elizabeth.
She does, doesn't she?
So I'm kinda curious what she thinks about this whole topic. What does your circle of friends look like, Elizabeth?
Oh, I wasn't expecting to answer a question.
And you can always edit it out.
Yeah, yeah, I have one best friend. I think that when, you have younger children, you find that the conversations you have with other adults your age or about the kids don't really go beyond that. We don't
It's
have
true.
time between work and the children and activities and so yeah, we talked a bit about this yesterday, but I am looking forward to um as I age, finding groups and friends that have, common hobbies.
It will happen for you. And it is later.
Yeah.
It just is. Yeah, we tend to have those foundational friends and the legacy friends and the parenting friends, but
Yeah. So I do have 2 questions for you. Um, have you ever maintained a friendship longer than you should have because of shared history, social circles, or maybe even how it appeared on the outside?
Yes. I had a friendship that I maintained for a long time out of a sense of obligation. Um, it was someone who, when we met, this person was having some difficulties in their life. We had some things in common. We had our children were around the same age, and we became friends because of that. But there were some things going on in this person's life that were very complicated and difficult. And so I kind of became a resource. But over time, it started to become apparent to me that I was being taken advantage of in that friendship. It was kind of a one-way street, but I felt so obligated because I didn't wanna let down someone who was in a difficult position. Eventually, though, it just wasn't sustainable, and it was hard to kind of break that off. It felt cruel. It wasn't, but it really felt cruel, and I don't think of myself as a cruel person, but sometimes you just have to let something go because it's just gonna drain your energy, and there's not enough energy to go around.
so, yes, I had a friendship like that. It was actually with a coworker that was having some difficulty in life in general and with work, and I will say I stayed in that relationship, that friendship for several years out of empathy. I felt like I was the only one there to support and to help, but what happened, is it was toxic for me. I crave positive energy. I feel like I give positive energy. It's not that we shouldn't be empathetic, but at some point when it's not moving or helping that individual and the purpose for that empathy or the reason for that friendship is not changing that individual in any way, but it is changing you in a negative way, it is time to let go. Um, Unfortunately, you do feel guilt. I felt guilt about that, but I wanted to protect myself, and at the end of the day, it made no difference to that other individual. So, yeah, I let it go.
Do you think people avoid expansive friendships because they're uncomfortable or because they're afraid of what they might discover about themselves?
Kind of both and neither at the same time. I actually think people struggle with identity. You know, that's kind of a fundamental human thing is to figure out who the heck we are. And sometimes I think people avoid so Marianne talked about mirror friendships, right? That's so easy to just define yourself and surround yourself by people who reinforce your view of yourself, and then you don't have to struggle with that identity question. Those are the people I think that are very intolerant of others who have different ways of life because they can only protect themselves by staying in that closed, tight definition of self. So I think they avoid anything that's going to challenge that. But I think to me, it all comes down to identity.
I think there's a lot of people that don't think deep enough about why they have the friends that they have and why they don't. So I think they don't want to be wrong. They are comfortable in their own thinking. They think they are right. That is their comfort zone. and for somebody to have a different view that would definitely highlight them thinking about their own views and why. I don't think they want the challenge of that. I think there's a lot of people like that. It's short-sighted. I think it takes sometimes trauma. It takes something in life that happens to them that they have to seek a different perspective because the people in the circle that they have at that point in time cannot. They can validate some of it, but they can't help them outside of it. And, Leslie Ann told a story, and I told a little one earlier in the podcast about taking our children out of something that was very comfortable and listening to other people's perspective. No, that is not good for them. You really need to put them in this perspective, in this situation. And I know my husband's like, how's that going to help? They don't think like that. They don't live like, all of that. So I think that you can get set in your ways and really think what you think and what you're right about. And in the end, it's such an injustice to yourself.
All right. Well, we hope you guys have enjoyed listening to this episode. And as always, visit us at AmericanMidsters.com.